Hi, welcome to my video on factoring when the GCF is a rational number. All factoring in the previous videos was with factors belonging to the set of integers. Most times we factor with the set of integers. And again, remind you of integers. It's a 1, a 2, a 3, dots, 0, and the opposites of 1, -1, opposites of 2, -2, opposites of 3, -3, etc. So there's a set of integers. This video will have the leading coefficient as a rational number, which is a fraction. If so, it will be the GCF of the polynomial. So the leading coefficient in this video will be a fraction, and that will be the GCF for this polynomial. Let's review. Recall the product of rational numbers or product of fractions. When we multiply, I always like to, when we multiply fractions, I always like to cancel. So the 6 is understood to be 6 over 1. So 2 into 2 goes once, 2 into 6 goes 3, 3 times 1 is 3, 1 times 1 is 1, so that gives me a 3. 12 is 12 over 1. 3 into 3 goes once, 3 into 12 goes 4, and -1 times 4 is -4, over 1 is -4. And again, the 10 is 10 over 1. I'm not going to write it down this time. 5 cancels into 10 twice, and we get a 6. Notice 5 into 5 goes 1, 5 into 10 goes 2. So this number is 6 over 1, which is 6. And again, we cancel. 7 into 28 goes 4, and we get -2 times 4 is -8. And when we divide rational numbers or fractions, we multiply by division. The 12 is multiplied by the reciprocal of 2 over 3, which is 3 over 2. That means we're multiplying fractions, so we do the same as we do up here. We cancel. So 2 into 12 goes 6, and 6 times 3 is 18. Again, when we're dividing, we multiply by the reciprocal. And the reciprocal of a -1/4 is a -4 over 1, or just a -4. Now we get no cancellation. We get just 32. And number 3, this is 15 times the reciprocal, which is 4 over 5. 5 into 15 goes 3, so that gives us a 12. And number 4, -9 times reciprocal of 3 over 7 is 7 over 3. 3 into 9, -9 goes -3. -3 times 7 is a -21. So that's a review of multiplying and dividing with rational numbers or fractions. Let's use that to our advantage now to use it in factoring. It says factor each completely. Completely means break it right down till you get all multiplication fully factored. We have a half as a leading coefficient, so we're going to take the half as to be the GCF. That means I'm going to take the half and move it outside the brackets. That's similar to when we're doing 2x plus 6, where we took a 2 out. So if I did 2x plus 6, now this is just different. I would take the 2 out by GCF and divide 2 into 2x to get x, and I divide 2 into 6 to get a 3. So now we're going to do the same idea, but we have a half. So a half divided by a half is 1. And so if we take 3 and divide it by a half, that's 3 times 2, so that makes that a 6. So let's check. A half times x, half x. A half of 6, 3. Perfect. So by taking the half out, or we divide the half into both of these. That's the same as when we take the 2 out of here by GCF, we divide the 2 into both of these. So we're doing the same idea, only this time we have a fraction. B, we got 2/3 x plus 6. So the 2/3 is going to be my GCF. So 2/3 divided by 2/3 is 1. There's the 1. Understood. 1x. So what is 6 divided by 2/3? That's 6 times 3 over 2. 2 into 6 goes 3. And so 3 times 3 is 9. And again, 2/3 times x, 2/3. 2/3 of 9. 3 into 9 goes 3. 2, 3, 6. So we're just checking it back. Perfect. We can also have a negative fraction at the beginning, negative number. So let's take out the negative 4/5. Remember, when we factor, we should not have the leading coefficient negative. So negative 4/5 divided by negative 4/5 is just 1x. And what is, now I don't have to deal with the negative, we'll do that after. So what's a negative divided by negative? That's a positive. So what is 8 divided by 4/5? That's 8 times 5 over 4. 4 and 8 goes 2. 2 times 5 gives me 10. So check back. Negative 4/5 times x, negative 4/5. Negative 4/5 times plus 10. Negative times a positive is a negative. And 5 into 10 goes 2. 2 4s are 8. Perfect. D, we have 1/6, so we take the 1/6 out. So 1/6 divided by 1/6 is 1. That gives us x squared. And 2 divided by 1/6 is 2 times 6 over 1, which is just 6. So that gives me a 12, and it's positive. And we cannot factor the sum of these two, because if that's a square, 12 is not a square, so we cannot factor, even though we got a square there. E, 1/3 is going to be my GCF, so I'm going to take the 1/3 out. 1/3 divided by 1/3 is x squared. Now we have two terms here, so let's do one at a time. So 3 divided by 1/3 is 3 times 3 over 1, and that's a 9. So that's a plus 9x. Now we have 6 divided by 1/3. So that's 6 times 3 over 1. So that gives me 18, plus 18. So 1/3 times 9. 3 into 9 goes 3. 1 times 3 is 3. 3 into 18 goes 6. 6 times 1 is 6, so that's perfect. But can this trinomial be factored? Well, if you were doing this, some scrap paper, let's pretend we're on scrap paper. So x squared is x and x. Perfect. The product is plus 18. So we have 2 pluses or 2 minuses. So what 2 do we have? It's 2 of the middle signs, because that's the sum. So it's going to be 2 pluses. Now, what's the factors of 18? Well, let's do them down here. 18 is 1 times 18, 2 times 9, and 3 times 6. Remember, 9 has a 3, so therefore 3 and 18 goes 6. If a 9 got a 3, 18 has to have a factor of 3. So because the signs are the same, that means we're adding the factors up. So 18 and 1 is 19. 1 and 9 is 11. Oh, 3 and 6 is the correct answer. So because they're both positive, so we have the 3 and the 6. So that means I can put this answer in on the sheet. Now, if I were doing a test, these are my workings on the sheet of scrap paper. Now I put in x, and x, a plus, and a plus, and I got a 3 and a 6. That's the complete factorization. So I took out a GCF, and then I factored this trinomial further. So 1/3 times x plus 3 times x plus 6 is that trinomial up there. And if you want to multiply these by FOIL, go ahead and simplify it. And then when you multiply by 1/3, the FOIL on these two binomials is going to be this. And then you multiply by 1/3, you get that trinomial. F, we have a negative 3/4 as GCF. Again, I take the negative out because I want the leading coefficient right here to be positive. Negative 3/4 divided into negative 3/4 is a 1 x squared. There's the 1, understood. Now, we positive divided by negative, that's going to be a negative number. So that's 3 divided by 3/4. So I put the negative in here so that I don't have to worry about doing the negatives up here. So I just do the 3 divided by 3/4. So that's 3 times 4 over 3. 3 cancels, and I get a 4. 3/4 times 4. The 4's cancel, I get a 3. Now, what we have is, we have x squared. So that's an x squared minus a 2 squared. So that's the difference. That's the difference because it's subtract of 2 squares. So if the difference of 2 squares, we have 2 brackets, 2 binomials. X squared is x and x. The 2 squared is a 2 and a 2. And because the product is a -4, that means I have a plus and a minus. Now note, this is a difference of 2 squares, and the middle term, I'll just write it down here, down below, x squared plus 0x minus 4. Notice there's no x in here. That means the middle term, which is the sum, is 0. So that means the 2 factors I put in here, when I add them up, give me a 0. So that's the difference of 2 squares that you look for when you see it. Difference. Notice this is the sum. Even if that was a 4 or a 9 or 25 or 36, you cannot factor the sum of 2 squares. You can only do the difference of 2 squares. We did a video on the sum. Can't do it. So practice means now you have 8 of these to do. Pause your video, work these out, and press play to see if you're right. Let's go. 1/5 is going to come out. 1/5 divided by 1/5 is just 1x. 2 divided by 1/5 is 2 times 5 over 1. So that's a plus 10. Perfect. 4 over 3 is the GCF. Let's take it out. 4 over 3 divided by 4 over 3 is a 1x, just a 1. And now we have negative divided by positive. That's a negative number. So let's do 4 divided by 4 over 3. 4 times 3 over 4. Dividing, multiplied by the reciprocal. 4's cancel, 1 each. So that gives me 1 times 3 is 3. And that's fact, we can't factor this any further. Number 3, we have a negative 5 over 6 as the GCF because it's the leading term. We take the negative out because I want this term to be a plus, and not only a plus, yes, I want it to be a plus and I want it to be a 1. So negative 5 over 6 divided by negative 5 over 6 is a 1x. 1 is understood to be there. And positive divided by negative is a negative number, so we know why, because a negative times a negative is a positive. So now we have 15 divided by 5 over 6. That's a 5. That's 15 times 6 over 5, multiplied by the reciprocal. 5 into 15 goes 3. 3 sixes are 18. Perfect. And if you multiply the negative 5 over 6 by these two, you'll get those two up there. And number 4, we have a leading coefficient of a half. So we'll take the half out. So a half divided by a half is a 1. So there's a 1x. So now we have 4 divided by a half. So that's 4 times 2. So that's a plus 8y. Then we have a negative divided by positive is a negative. So we got 5 divided by a half. So that's 5 times 2. So that's a 10. So check. A half times x, half x. Half of 8, 4. Half of 10, 5. And it's negative. Perfect. Continue, number 5. We have a negative 2/3 as my GCF. And a negative divided by a negative. So we just get negative 2/3 divided by negative 2/3 is 1x squared. And we have a negative divided by negative. Ooh. Excuse me. Sorry, but I wasn't careful enough. I was used to taking so many fractions out up here that I just decided to take a fraction. But I forgot to take, sorry about that, I forgot to take the x also, because now the x is a GCF. So not only is it negative 2/3, but it's a negative 2/3 x, because if x is common, we take out the smallest exponent, which is a 1. So negative 2/3 x is the GCF up here. So negative 2/3 x squared divided by x just gives me an x, 1x. Negative divided by negative is a positive. And x divided by x is 1. So I just have to deal with 6 divided by 2/3. Remember, negative divided by negative is a positive. X divided by x is 1. So 6 times 3 over 2. 2 into 6 goes 3. 3 times 3 is 9. So now this is factored right. So negative 2/3 x times x is a negative 2/3 x squared. Negative times a positive is a negative. 2/3 of 9. 3 into 9 goes 3. 2 3s are 6. Perfect. And I do not need an x here because I already have one. Note 2, 1. This is a 1 and a 0. That's a constant. Number 6, I have a 1/3. I better be careful now. So I have, 1/4. I have a 1/4. X is not common, so it's only a number that's common, a numerical. 1/4 divided by 1/4 is 1, so I get a 1x squared. So a negative divided by positive is a negative, and I got a 1/4 divided by 1/4, so that's 4 times 4 over 1. 4 over 1 understood, so that's a 16. Looks like I got a difference of two terms. Looks, again, that's an x squared minus 4 squared. That's the difference of two squares. Again, also remind you that notice the middle term is a 0. It's because 0x is not written in, so that's the sum is 0. So we got an x squared and an x squared. The product is negative 16, so it's a plus and a minus. And what are the factors of 16 to add up to give me a 0? Because 0x is not written in, but it's understood. So that's a 4 and a 4. Notice this is x squared minus 4 squared. So there's an x, 4, 4, plus minus. So it's the same two terms, plus minus. If you did the FOIL on this, you would see the outside is negative 4x, inside is 4x, and they add up to give you 0. And the first terms are x squared, last terms negative 16. Perfect. Number 7, I have a half as the leading term. Notice x is here and here, but there's no x here, so x is not a GCF, only 1/2. 1/2 x squared divided by 1/2 is x squared. Okay, and that's a positive. So we have a 2 divided by 1/2. That's 2 times 2 over 1, so that's a 4. Reason was a half times 4 is 2. Perfect. And an x. And a negative divided by a positive, that's going to be negative. Now I have 6 divided by a half. So that's 6 times 2 over 1, or 2. And 2 times 6 is 12. Again, check. Half times 12 is 6, and it's negative. We have a trinomial. Is this trinomial factorable? Well, I'm going to use a sheet of scrap paper now. So pretend that this is a scrap paper. And if this is going to factor, it's going to factor in terms of the two brackets as the product of two binomials. So I have an x and an x, perfect, x squared. It ends in the product is a negative 12, so that means I'm going to have a plus and a minus. When you multiply those two signs, you get a negative. So that means they have to add up to give you 4. So what we're looking at is the factors of 12. Product is 12, so it's 1 times 12. I always do the 1 and the number first. It's even, so it's 2 times 6. A 6 has a 3, so 3 into 12 goes 4. I think that's all the factors. Now, because the signs are different, these factors are going to differ. Notice these factors. That's a negative 16, so the signs are different. So these signs are different, so they have to differ by 4. So that's a 11. Nope. Oh, there it is. There's the 4 there. Because 3 and 4 differ by 1. So it's a 2 and a 6. So that means if it's a 2 and a 6, is it plus 2 minus 6 or plus 6 minus 2? Well, the larger factor is going to be positive. So that's a plus 6 minus 2. So I go back and I write in, this is x plus 6 and x minus 2. Because if you're wrong on this factorization, you don't need to show all the workings. The workings can be done on a sheet of scrap paper. But, again, multiply that by FOIL and you'll get that trinomial. Multiply by a half through all these terms and you'll get that. Excellent. Perfect. If you're working these right, Super. And the last one, we have we have 1/5 as the leading term. So we take the 1/5 out. That's an x squared, an x, and a number. We have no x in this term, so x is not a GCF. So here we go. 1/5 divided by 1/5 is a 1x squared. Now we have 2/5. So let's do the signs first. Negative divided by positive is a negative. Negative divided by positive is a negative. So I got the two signs done. So what's 2/5 divided by 1/5? Well, let's write it down. Take your time. So 2/5 times 5 over 1. The 5's cancel, and you get a 2x. Don't forget there's an x with this. Now we got 3/5 divided by 1/5. So that's 3/5 times 5 over 1. The 5's cancel, and you get a 3. 5 into 5 goes once, 5 into 5 goes once. 1 times 3 is 3. 5's cancel. Now, is this trinomial factorable? So I have the 1/5 out. Is it trinomial? Notice when I look at the 3, I see two factors of 3 and 1. Will 3 and 1 give me a 2? Yep, so we're okay. Notice the product is negative, so that means the two signs are going to be a plus and a minus. So, looks like it's going to work. So, if I do this, if I did a sheet of scrap paper, I would do this, and x squared is x and x, and the product is a -3, the sum is -2, so that means I have a plus and a minus because the product is negative. Notice I always do the plus first and the minus after. That's just me. I always work that way, because if anything is going to factor further, later on in the topic, in the unit on factoring 2, this is only factoring 1, the introduction to factoring. When I do factoring 2, this will be important to put the plus first and the minus after, because this is the one that's going to factor further most times, not this one. And the factors of 3 are 3 and 1, 1 times 3, and 3 and 1 got to differ by 2, yep, and there's a plus minus. And this time, the sum is -2, so that means the 3 has to be negative. So it's an x plus 1, x minus 3, and all these workings were done on a sheet of scrap paper. And notice, multiply x squared, multiply outside, and you get a -3. So the inside is a -3x. Sorry, the outside is a -3x, the inside is 1x, and that will give you -2 when you add. So this is the correct factorization. So that's doing the factoring, this time over the rational numbers where the leading coefficient is a fraction. And you divide that fraction into each term and work out your math. Working with fractions, another review. This is not done that much. This is not shown. So I took all to make sure, because you will need this certain times in the other topics in the math coming in grade 11 and 12 and etc. Good to know. If you like my video, click the like button, the subscribe button, and the notification bell if you're a subscriber. You might write a comment on my video if you wish. And my math website is www.mathfullyexplained.com. I have 3 sections: me, about my degrees and teaching experience. The video section talks about the strategies I'm going to use to help you learn your math. And the section on content has the topics or the units of math with the number of videos on each topic. And the black font is what's online right now on my YouTube channel, Math Fully Explained. And the red font is what will be developed in the future. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.